Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. The Human Rights Watch says Indian forces are maiming, blinding and killing people in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In a statement, the international watchdog asked India to completely stop using pellet guns on unarmed civilians in the valley. It said Indian law enforcement's use of shotguns has resulted in shocking and grievous injuries to protesters. The United Nations has called for a humanitarian ceasefire in Afghanistan ahead of intra-Afghan negotiations in Doha. In a briefing to the UN Security Council, Secretary General's Special Representative for Afghanistan, Deborah Lyons, said the truce is crucial to ensure that humanitarian efforts are delivered and will be a win for all the parties, including Afghan people. The NATO says Turkey and Greece have agreed to hold technical talks to de-escalate tensions in the eastern Mediterranean Sea. NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg says the two sides will discuss establishing mechanisms for military deconfliction to reduce the risk of incidents. NATO members Athens and Ankara have been at odds over gas exploration claims and activities in rich waters. In Brazil, 834 more people have died from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, taking the tally to over 124,000. The world's third worst hit country, India, has recorded 1,096 deaths and more than 83,000 cases overnight. In Pakistan, 7 people have lost their lives to the virus in the last 24 hours, raising the death toll to 6,335. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 868,000 lives, while infecting over 26 million. In India, 7 people have died in an explosion at a fireworks factory in the southern Tamil Nadu state. Police officials say 4 others have been injured in the blast in Cuddalore district. They say the cause of the incident is yet to be ascertained. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. The Human Rights Watch says Indian forces are maiming, blinding and killing people in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In a statement, the international watchdog asked India to completely stop using pellet guns on unarmed civilians in the valley. The HRW says 17 people had died from pellets between 2015 and 2017. It said Indian law enforcement's use of shotguns has resulted in shocking and grievous injuries to the protesters. Moreover, HRW said Indian authorities need to recognize that the use of this weapon on civilians violates international law. Pakistan's military says 3 soldiers have embraced martyrdom after an IED attack on security forces in the northwestern province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. In a statement, the military's media wing said the attack in the North Waziristan district left 4 other soldiers wounded. It said the soldiers were providing protection to construction teams working in the area. The martyred soldiers were identified as Lieutenant Nasir Hussain Khalid, Muhammad Imran and Osman Akhtar. The United Nations has called for a humanitarian ceasefire in Afghanistan ahead of intra-Afghan negotiations in Doha. In a briefing to the UN Security Council, Secretary General's Special Representative for Afghanistan, Deborah Lyons, said the truce is crucial to ensure that humanitarian efforts are delivered and will be a win for all the parties, including Afghan people. Lyons said the peace talks will be a long and challenging process. She said attacks by spoilers targeting civilians involved in the peace process have hit near record numbers in the last few weeks. Earlier, Pakistan and Afghan politician Gulbuddin Hikmatyar also warned of spoilers in the peace process to destabilize the country. Bahrain says it will allow all the flights to and from the United Arab Emirates to cross through its airspace. The move will enable air services between Israel and the UAE to fly over the kingdom. Bahrain's civil aviation authority said the decision was made at the request of Abu Dhabi. The decision will cut the flying time between the Middle East states by several hours. Earlier this week, Israel's El Al made a first official flight from Tel Aviv to Abu Dhabi through Saudi airspace. Palestine's President Mahmoud Abbas says no one is authorized to speak on Palestinians' behalf. During a video conference, Abbas said the Arab countries did not abide by their financial commitments towards Palestine. Abbas said the Palestine Authority rejects the US to be the only mediator in any negotiations with Israel. He also called for an international peace conference under the supervision of the United Nations. On the 13th of August, the UAE and Israel announced a US-brokered agreement to normalize their relations. The Palestinian Authority and resistant factions have denounced the deal, calling it a betrayal of Palestinians' trust. The NATO says Turkey and Greece have agreed to hold technical talks to de-escalate tensions in the eastern Mediterranean Sea. NATO members Athens and Ankara have been at odds over gas exploration claims and activities in rich waters. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg says the two sides will discuss establishing mechanisms for military deconfliction to reduce the risk of incidents. He said the alliance is in close touch with all the concerned members to find a solution to the tensions in the spirit of NATO solidarity. Meanwhile, Turkey says it is ready for a dialogue to resolve the dispute without any preconditions. In a statement, the foreign ministry said Ankara hopes to find a permanent solution within the framework of international law. Serbia's President Alexander Vučić has rejected a US proposal of mutual recognition with Kosovo. Talking to reporters in Washington after talks with the delegation from Kosovo, Vučić said discussions are still underway, but he has clearly told interlocutors he will not recognize Kosovo's independence. The president said the first round of discussions was not easy and simple, but he was satisfied with the readiness of the Serbian delegation. Meanwhile, White House National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien says Kosovo and Serbia are already making progress. He said the talks on the first day were centered on the normalization of economic ties. Russia says it fully supports the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Belarus amid the ongoing political crisis. Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin said this after visiting Belarus to hold talks with President Alexander Lukashenko. Mishustin said Belarus must not give in to the external pressure by the West. During the meeting, Lukashenko said Belarus had intercepted a conversation between Poland and Germany. Lukashenko claimed the intercepted calls showed that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny's poisoning had been faked. Belarus has been rocked by weeks of protests against the alleged rigging in the last month's presidential vote. France has called on the US to withdraw sanctions on International Criminal Court prosecutor Fatou Bensouda. In a statement, Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian said the measures announced are a grave attack against the court. The decision has put multilateralism and the independence of judiciary into question. The French Foreign Minister pledged Paris's unwavering support for the court and its staff. On Wednesday, the US imposed sanctions on Bensouda over her investigation into whether American forces committed war crimes in Afghanistan. The US also blacklisted head of the ICC's jurisdiction, complementarity and cooperation division, Fakiso Mochichoko. 7 U.S. police officers have been suspended in the New York state over the custodial death of an African-American. Rochester's mayor, Lovely Warren, says systematic racism led to the death of Daniel Prude. The move to suspend the officers is the first disciplinary action against Prude's death in March. Meanwhile, protesters took to the streets of Washington after police fatally shot another black man, Deon Kay. Demonstrators marched to the mayor's residence, calling on her to fire the police chief. Over in New York, a car drove into Black Lives Matter protesters in Times Square, hitting several people. In Brazil, 834 more people have died from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, taking the tally to over 124,000. The world's third worst hit country, India, has recorded 1,096 deaths and more than 83,000 cases overnight. Now, globally, the virus has claimed more than 868,000 lives while infecting over 26 million people. More in this report.
Thousands continue to die every day from the new coronavirus in India and the US as the country struggles to contain the raging outbreak. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro has ruled out making COVID-19 vaccination mandatory as the country's infections top 4 million, while the White House has refused the World Health Organization's authentication for its vaccine in the works. But US doctors warn against rushing a COVID-19 immunization to be used as a tool for election campaign.
I just think that given that it's a 2-dose vaccine, that we're still not fully recruited for the first dose, that we have to wait a month for a second dose, then we have to wait another 2 weeks till we get full immunity from that second dose. And then people in the placebo group have to get sick, not just infected, but get sick. I just can't imagine how that all happens by the end of October.
The pandemic is once again finding foothold in Europe, where England has reported its highest number of weekly cases since end of May. In France, centers are ramping up testing in an effort to reach 1 million tests per week amid rising rate of spread. In Spain, thousands of teachers have undergone COVID-19 tests days before a fresh academic year starts. Meanwhile, New Zealand has decided to retain coronavirus measures across the country until mid-September.
That is why today Cabinet decided to retain the current settings, with the next review to take place on Monday the 14th of September. If at that time a change in alert levels is made, it will be time to take effect from 11:59 on Wednesday the 16th of September.
In Asia, South Korea continues to grapple with ways to stem local spread as it reports 198 new cases in the past 24 hours, while China has kept local transmission at zero for the past 2 weeks now.
In Pakistan, 7 more people have lost their lives to the new coronavirus, raising the death toll to 6,335. The Health Ministry said 498 new cases of the disease were detected as the rate of infection spread continues to decline. The ministry said the number of active cases in the country is at 8,909. The ministry said with a 95% rate of recovery, over 282,000 patients out of some 297,000 have recovered. Sindh remains the most affected province with over 130,000 infections, while Punjab has reported 97,000 cases so far. So time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Iran has strongly condemned a French magazine, Charlie Hebdo's republication of a caricature offensive to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh says any disrespect and insult to prophets is totally unacceptable. Khatibzadeh said the provocative move made in the name of freedom of speech hurt feelings of the Muslims across the world. He said Charlie Hebdo also disrespected Islamic values and the beliefs of more than 1 billion Muslims. Charlie Hebdo is the French left-wing magazine with a history of publishing derogatory and anti-religious content. In Lebanon, rescue workers have detected signs of life in the rubble of a building that collapsed after a huge explosion at the nearby port on August the 4th. Rescue workers said a team with a rescue dog detected movement under a destroyed building in the Gamazi area of Beirut. The team of rescue workers included volunteers from Chile, Lebanon, and the members of the civil defense. Local media said any search and rescue effort, after it becomes clear that someone was still alive, was likely to take hours.
It can indicate if there is anything breathing, a pulse, or anything still moving underground. It indicated there is a pulse, 18 breaths per minute. So this, along with the temperature sensor, means there is a possibility of life according to their sensors.
Over there in India, 7 people have died in an explosion at a fireworks factory in southern Tamil Nadu state. Police officials say 4 others have been injured in the blast in the Kudalur district. The officials said the owner of the factory is also among those dead. They said the cause of the incident is yet to be ascertained. The impact of the blast was so huge that it brought down the structure. An adventurer in Arizona floats 25,000 feet in the air, hanging with a cluster of giant-sized balloons. David Blaine, 47, kept dropping some weight on the ground during his flight to speed his ascent. After reaching a little higher than the height of Mount Everest, David strapped on an oxygen mask to assist breathing. The adventure lasted for half an hour as David released him from the balloons and free fell for 30 seconds before opening his parachute. Blaine has a history of performing high-profile and high-risk stunts such as locking himself in fishbowl, trapping himself in ice block for 2 days, and standing on tall and thin tower. His latest feat also went without any glitches, and he reached back to Earth safe and sound. The coronavirus medical waste has been polluting Indonesian waters, which presents a looming health risk as it can trigger the COVID-19 outbreak once again. More in this report.
Medical waste from across Indonesia has been polluting the water bodies in the country. According to the Health Ministry data, 1,500 tons of COVID-19 medical waste was produced in the country each day from March to June. Recently, a waste landfill site collapsed in Tangerang City, sending hundreds of tons of medical leftovers in the Cisadane River. Residents living downstream have reported a constant stream of medical waste washing up on the banks, leading to potential uncontrolled spread of the coronavirus.
This river is a water source for the whole Tangerang area, and we are concerned about the sustainability of this river. We don't want it polluted with any waste, including industrial waste, which is dangerous. Especially during this pandemic, if we find medical waste that is used to treat COVID-19 patients, it's even more dangerous.
As Indonesia struggled to contain the spread of the coronavirus, its health ministry has acknowledged that pandemic caused an increase in medical waste.
A new regulation has just passed that consists of guidelines for medical waste treatment in every health facility. We have been pushing for this regulation with help from the Environment Ministry because of this issue. So our concept is that medical waste treatment must be handled on a regional basis.
The ministry also admitted the country lacks treatment facilities, but said it is working to find a solution.
An unemployed artist in the Philippines has resorted to a unique idea of using tree leaves as primary art equipment to earn livelihood. More details in this report.
The Philippines has imposed some of the world's longest and toughest coronavirus measures in the country. A 23-year-old factory worker, Mary May Decane, had to lose her job as the restrictions led to the massive workforce layoff. But this hitch didn't stop Mary from earning her livelihood, through which she can also pursue her artistic passion. Due to the lockdown, Mary was unable to find traditional art supplies, so she resorted to the unique idea of using leaves as primary canvas.
Because of this pandemic, I wanted to try making artwork, but purchasing art supplies in my town was very difficult because of the strict lockdown. The only way was to buy online, but it was also difficult. I experimented using leaves as a makeshift canvas, and it turned out really nice.
Mary's artwork includes intricately pruned leaves revealing well-known faces from Robert Downey Jr., Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jackson to Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte. She has sold her beautiful artworks for at least $8 per piece and earned handsomely during the pandemic.
Nakakatulong po to.
This leaf art has helped me so much financially during this pandemic. The money I used to pay bills, buy food for my family, and our other daily expenses are from my earnings from commissioned work.
Mary also pays tribute to the frontline warriors against the pandemic by cutting out leaf portraits of doctors, nurses, and other paramedical staff.
European stocks edge higher as banks drag the major indices into positive territory. Investors are trying to shrug off uncertainty fueled by Wall Street's tech sell-off. The pan-European stock 600 gained marginally, while banks surged nearly 2.5%. London's FTSE and Italy's FTSE MIB gained 0.5% each. Frankfurt's DAX edged up fractionally, while Paris's CAC 40 also climbed over 0.5%. Earlier, Asian stocks slumped over Wall Street's dive and escalating Sino-US tensions. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.